Welcome, low ego action heroes. This is Debbie Levitt from DeltaCX.com. We're a full service CX and UX consultancy and agency. We do projects, training, and consulting. Let us know how we can help. Check us out. I've made some changes to my microphone, so will the people in the live audience please tell me if this sounds good, bad, better, worse? I'm also sitting next to a fan. I hope that's not bothering you. I can turn it off if it is. So please give me some thoughts on my microphone sound so I can adjust it before we bring on our special guest. Elaine, it's not that new. I've had this microphone a couple of months now, but it's a lot of fun. Hey, this is Office Hours Ask Us Anything, where once a month we bring on a super special guest, you know who, to answer some questions with us. But before I bring in his fantastic greatness and highness, let me first thank all of the people who have been giving past, present, and future to the channel through the YouTube join button. Totally optional, always appreciated. I even updated this yesterday. So thanks, everybody. And thank you for keeping me in streaming software and chocolate chips. I definitely ate some today. So without further ado, as they say. Oh, thanks, Tareen. I should explain my hair. So whenever you see my hair super flat like this, I wasn't caught in the rain. I got a haircut, and for some reason, my Italian hairdresser, who is very talented, likes to blow it out and blow it out and blow it out and blow it out, and then steam iron it, and the steam's flying all over the place, and so it ends up very flat. Personally, I think I look better with puffy hair, but I'm a little bit left over from the 70s and 80s, so I prefer the giant hair thing. Also, I think having gained some weight, the flat hair kind of just brings out the weight in my face, which I'm very self-conscious about. Hashtag menopause. So anyway, to talk about another day. So again, if there's any improvements to my microphone, let me know. Otherwise, we will bring in Mr. Wonderful, and I will move our comments so they're not going over his face. Dr. Nick, tell us who you are.
Hi, you guys know me. I don't need to do the big fancy intros, right? I'm me. You guys know me. I'm just noisy.
I'm me.
Yeah, I'm me. I'm Dr. Nick, the user-centric guy. Or one of the user-centric guys.
Well, that'll have to do then. You can find Dr. Nick on LinkedIn as Dr. Nick Fine, F-I-N-E. I am still trying to figure out where to put these comments because now they're going to be over my face. Give me
So I want to ask the audience, do you think Debbie should keep her hair like this permanently? That's my
question.
Oh
my God, the amount of effort I would have to put in, like, that is just not my brand. I am wash and run. I embrace my low effort and my masculinity, so I don't know what to tell you. Oh no, they're voting yes. I don't have time for this crap, y'all. I live in the country. I got dirt under my fingernails. I don't have time to be blowing out my hair and ironing my hair. And I got to put on like a dainty southern accent for this and be like, oh, I will be so beautiful for the dance tonight, Corporal.
Blanche Dubois, yes. Right. Anyway.
Oh, lordy me. Oh, my hair. Rich, what are your thoughts on... Okay, so Rich, we're going to add your question to the list. We did get 2 questions ahead of you, Rich, so we will get to you soon. Thank you in advance for your vote for fluffy hair. Thank you, Malika. Malika's got beautiful hair. Okay, so just a reminder to everybody, we want to take your questions. You can put them here in the chat where they're going to show up on the screen with your name. If you want to ask anonymously, head on over to deltacx.com/links and find the Office Hours Anonymous link. That'll come into my email and I won't be shouting out your name. I know it's out of your fantastic reach there. So fluffy hair unite. Okay, so let me put up our first question of the day, which came in ahead of time. You can send them in 24 hours a day, and I pile them up and wait for the big day. So this question says, should one define the problem scope before doing any discovery research, and how? How about writing a formula for writing a problem statement? For example, users experience problem X, which leads to outcome Y. So, Nick, there's 2 questions in there. Let's attack both of them.
Well, obviously, it depends. We have to lead off with that, and that's the thing that's screaming through my head. So let's just say, well, that depends. I'm just going to like riff on this one because I'm not going to really think it through. If you don't know anything about this, then it's like a wide open discovery and you've got some wild hypothesis for a product or something, then you probably don't want to define the problem scope, or you're defining it at a really high level. Like, I think that my product meets these needs, or, you know, this unmet, there's a solution in the world. If you've got a specific problem, then you're going to kind of hypothesize to it and test to it. The only reason why I'm kind of fluffing around this is because if it's a true discovery, you don't really want to kind of bias yourself too much. But what we're doing here is this hypothesis testing, and that's why I'm kind of tippy-toeing around this one a little bit, because it really does depend. I mean, I think you'd have to give me, or Debbie or Darren or anyone, a much more concrete example, and then I could give you some concrete strategy. It's on this kind of a question that it's a very much it depends kind of a question.
And do you have a formula for writing a problem statement, or a template or formula, since that's the second half of the question?
For me, those are hypotheses. That's how my brain works in science land, if you know what I mean. Everything is hypothesis testing, or idea testing, as we like to kind of call it in the commercial world. So I have an idea that uses experience problem X, which leads to outcome Y. Or maybe I know that for sure, and I'm hypothesizing over potential solutions or other things. So it's in that world. This isn't a cookie cutter or a laws of UX type black and white thing. It really is on a case-by-case basis.
Great. I'm going to add to that in just a moment. We've had 2 questions come in anonymously, and I'm going to get those queued up so that we can answer those later, and then let me add my 2 cents. So mostly I do agree with Nick on this one. Okay, Cam, we have a question from Cam. We're going to put that on the end of the list. Thank you in advance for your patience. It's going to be a while. Okay, so in my opinion, in many cases, we are doing generative discovery, exploratory research to define the problem. And I think if we start out with a problem, if the problem is a guess or assumption, then we run the risk that we create the research that specifically tries to validate or invalidate the problem. And chances are you will fake validate it because someone's under pressure there to say, this is a good idea, right? Everybody wants cups the size of their head. You know, let's prove it. Let's prove that there's that audience out there. So I try to stay away from problem statements. If someone gives me a problem statement, I treat it as an assumption, and I want to write questions and tasks around it to see if it's partially true, wholly true, not true at all. So I don't take it for granted that this is the problem. Even if they say, well, we did some of our own research, it's the problem. Because I find as soon as somebody has a problem, the research they create is in the box. It assumes that this problem statement or challenge or question is true, or it assumes that the thing that the stakeholder wants to build is the right thing, and then we end up not really creating the best possible research. So I would say, you know, even if you think you have a problem statement up front, like we believe our users want a giant cup the size of their heads, still treat that as an assumption and write the discovery, exploratory, generative, qualitative research that would answer your questions. And don't forget episode 190 that we did yesterday about the quadrant. Make sure that you are using the quadrant exercise. And again, go back and look at yesterday's show, episode 190. You'll find it on YouTube in the podcast playlist, as well as the micro lessons playlist. You can't miss it. Solomon is saying you can't presuppose what you're going to discover until you do. Good point. Do the generative research to find out what there is to find out, or regardless of invalidation, stakeholders will push along and invest thousands in releasing a half-baked MVP. Nick, something to add?
Yeah, we are all subject to our stakeholders, our peers, product managers, whatever they are, giving us problems, not solutions. Giving us solutions, not problems. But sometimes they'll give us problems which aren't problems. And as Debbie was saying, she treats them as assumptions. I treat them as hypotheses. Same kind of a deal, you know. You've probably heard of the 5 whys as a kind of a consultative tool. Well, think about it. We're just going backwards. Why? To kind of get behind it, to get to the truth or the thing that's going on. And there's probably 5 problems. in which case, the problem that you're given, if you take a Debbie and my approach and kind of make it as an assumption and not listen to it, but treat it as a hypothesis, then you'll get back to the real problem through your research usually, and quite quickly. And that's
if you're
that's
open
the real
to
trick.
it. Yeah, the trick is to be open to it and to dispel those assumptions. And then as for let me put the question back up. As for any kind of formula for problem statements, we actually do cover problem statements in my new book, Customers Know You Suck, available where books exist. And so I talk about how I have kind of a general format, but it's not a hard and fast rule. I look at the customer or user problem from the customer or user perspective, not from a business perspective. I take a look at what some of the outcomes or shrapnel or carnage or ripple out effects might be for the user, as well as some of the impact to the business. So users have this problem. This means that the business is having this problem. Maybe customer support is overloaded with calls because people are having trouble, and therefore this is a problem worth fixing for everybody, which of course also leads into my impact maps if you want. We just did show on impact maps. You'll find that in the conference sessions playlist on the YouTube channel. So thank you for that. So I'm going to put up the next question. This one was quite long. So Nick, and those of you playing along at home, get out your pen and paper, because this one is a story. And we do welcome long questions, so I'm not picking on this person, but it means there's a lot of information we're going to have to wrap our head around in order to try to answer it. And I'll read it out in slow motion. Okay, here we go. Hello, friends. Thank you for taking questions. And given that there's a parentheses mark after that, I think I know who it's from. We have one friend of the show who does that. Scenario. Imagine that we're working for a startup that produces locks. We've uncovered several problem areas through our research. For example, the lock on my garage would freeze in the winter and I couldn't unlock the door. I only use this garage once or twice in the winter, so I have a workaround. I enter through the window, do what I need to do, and then leave. In this example, the user is aware of a problem, but it may not be urgent to solve since they haven't taken any action to address it. How do we determine which problem is the most urgent or burning for our target customers and that they'll pay for it? How can I have evidence that there's a market for the product?
That's an interesting example. Hang on, because I'm like, why would you go through the window if it's frozen anyway? And that's where my brain is at.
Right? Isn't the window frozen closed too?
Well, no, not just that. So it's frozen and it's probably icy, in which case this is a much more elevated problem. You probably would have got it fixed, right? It's not a convenient workaround. It's a real pain in the neck solution. It's a proper hack. Like, you wouldn't do that for much longer. The user may be taking any action to address it. I can't really tell you on this one. I really can't. It's your example that's throwing my brain out, because I'm like looking at doing some kind of scale ethnographic study of watching people go through their windows instead of their garages. Like, or workarounds for frozen locks, or how common is a frozen lock problem.
David says, product manager says, make the window larger. We're doing, hold on, where's my?
I'm thinking of like a tea cozy, like a little mini jumper for the padlock to keep it
I like
warm,
that, the dog hoodie for the padlock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Solomon says product manager says light the door on fire.
You guys are disruptive. I don't have a good answer on this one. I really, really don't. Deb, and if you've got something of quality, it'll be much better than I can come up with right now.
I think the best that I could do is probably to invoke Larry's task analysis, because as soon as I think about workarounds, manually intensive stuff, cognitive load stuff, knowledge gaps and workarounds, I'm hearing Larry in my head. And so my question would be the workaround issue. Now, first of all, it sounds like from a manufacturing or lock design perspective, this lock has a has a defect. This lock has a defect in that it freezes in the winter. So
Yes.
that makes me question the metals or materials used, the quality
Yes.
of the machining, the quality of the rolling off the factory line. Now, I could joke that I have the smallest amount of lock domain knowledge because I am a big fan of, on YouTube, the Lock Picking Lawyer. Does anybody else watch the YouTube channel Lock Picking Lawyer? Oh, he's amazing. So I have a few thoughts about locks, but mostly from watching him because he's so damn good. So to me, we can talk about, well, is this really a problem? Because the user found a workaround. Remember, if Larry were here and he's the little angel on our shoulders, he would say the workaround is a sign that something isn't right. Just because people found a way to put some tape on it and glue their own problem back together doesn't mean that we have a problem. Because let's be honest, even if users are still buying this lock, even if users are still crawling in their own windows, everybody would probably prefer a lock that worked year-round, especially if you live in a climate that gets so cold that your lock freezes. Where I live, it's rarely below freezing. I might not have that problem, but if we're selling and marketing and advertising a lock in a market in which this lock can malfunction, then I would be looking back at the lock design and manufacturing. David says, does the user live in an Arctic tundra outside the bulk target market, or is this a system problem? Everyone is in good comedy spirits today. I'm happy to see that. We need definitely more comedy today, please. So anyway, how can I have evidence that there's a market for the product? If you are implying that your product is a lock that doesn't freeze in the winter, I think we can assume that your customers naturally wanted that. You know, it's like, it reminds me of the Eddie Izzard comedy bit where he talks about airplane life jackets. And he talks about how when they go through the safety thing, they say, you know, you can pull the tab to inflate the jacket, or you can blow in the tube, especially if you need to top it up. And Eddie Izzard goes, top up? I want stays up. You know, like, this is a life jacket. I don't want to have to keep blowing it up. So his comedy bit is around how we have the expectation that if we are in an airplane accident and in the water, we expect the life jacket's going to stay inflated and we don't have to keep blowing it. So I think there's an expectation. Do you know Eddie Izzard? You must know Eddie Izzard.
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah. So Chihuat says the home invader who works from home is probably not the target customer. That is funny.
And to be fair, right? I mean, again, I'm thinking of engineering plays, right? If that's a real problem and you live in Canada or Ukraine or I don't know, somewhere really cold where your locks, I was thinking of padlocks, which is dumb. You're obviously talking about key locks in the door type thing.
Either way, I mean, it's a garage. So.
Yeah, but whatever. There's probably an engineering solution to this one. But yeah, you're trying to find out, is there a need for that stuff, and would people pay for some fancy engineering or nano coating? Is it that much of a problem? And at that point, you've got to try to work out the value point between climbing through the window and paying for this upgraded lock.
And I want to remind everybody of the PayPal Venmo thing. You know, this is where I remind people, let's remember that PayPal and Venmo are the same company, but they market to different audiences. And they've actually been the same company, I believe, for over 10 years. But people have a certain opinion of Venmo, different opinion of PayPal, but I think the infrastructure is the same. And if you think about it, the functionality is quite similar. It's just different interfaces. So hypothetically, your company, if you want to try to research this, you can, but there could be the discount lock that isn't an all-season lock. We'll call it a warm weather lock, and for $2 more, $3 more, $5 more, whatever it might be, you can have the all-weather lock proved down to -20 Celsius and whatever it might be. And so people might say, oh, here's where I live, I want the better lock. Oh, here's where I live, I want the other lock, or just sell them in different markets. So I think there's room in both, because some people, you know, like, again, where I live, it's almost never below freezing. I don't need the tested to -20 Celsius lock, but maybe you just have two products. Who said you only have to end up with one product? Nick, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd probably sell to property developers who are building, huge complexes, and so they actually just get built as standard in cold weather places as standard, if you know what I mean. So they're built at source, if you know what I mean, and then just the rest is all retro upgrades. Anyway, we're talking about like lean canvassy type crap, and I'd rather stay away from this.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't love lean canvas either, but I think that ultimately if we want to be more strategic in our jobs, these could be some of the conversations we're having. But the problem with this one is that it's a larger question of physical product design, industrial design, lock manufacturing. A lot of us don't necessarily know about industrial design and factory floor manufacturing, so it might feel a little out of our realm. All right, next
Here's a question I have for you, Debbie.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to ask myself this question. How would we find out that people's locks are, A, that people's locks are freezing, and B, that it presents a problem that requires a solution? Like a problem that requires some kind of workaround more than just hitting it or holding it with your hands to warm it up, or, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah, so I think there's two key ways to know that. One of them is to wait for people to complain. Hey, it's December. I can't freaking open my garage. You guys are jerks. Or if we had really good quality assurance testers, then hypothetically we tested our locks in 45 Celsius. We tested our locks in hurricane winds. We tested our locks being hailed on. We tested our locks in -20 Celsius. We tested our locks in a simulation that makes it look like it rained for 100 days straight. So I think that where companies care about quality, the design will be higher quality, the manufacturing will be higher quality, the manufacturing will be aiming for fewer defects, and the quality assurance testing of the prototypes and the designs will reveal, this product isn't good in hurricane winds or high humidity or whatever. Now we have to ask ourselves, do we sell this as this is for you who live in Arizona desert, or do we fix our design? So I think those are the main ways you're going to learn. And just like in UX, I recommend that people learn this internally before you've released this to the public. And now either you're getting complaints or the lockpicking lawyer is roasting you on his channel.
Yeah, well, that was my point, really, was that the reality of it is likely that a product manager will come to you, and let's say it's a startup or it's fairly early stage, and they did release it for other better reasons, like get to market and other stuff. And then they found out, we tested it in hurricanes and lava and volcanoes, but we didn't test it with Sub-Zero, right? It was just oops. And then that's your curveball, or that's your product manager saying, it's going great, but every cold territory we're in, we're getting negative NPS, we're getting Trustpilot on fire, all of that stuff. You know what I mean? Interesting. Yeah, that's a cool one, because like I said, you can't really physically get a team of 20 people to go stand outside residential homes when it's cold. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
And that kind of stuff. So it's an interesting one. It ends up being self-reported, and
you could try to screen from your own customer base. I mean, you could try to screen from your own customer base and show a picture of the lock and be like, did you buy this lock in the last 6 months? And then try to see if you can go out to see them or talk to them. But ultimately, the reality of the story that we put up is we know it's a problem. Just because people have a workaround doesn't fix the problem, doesn't make the problem go away. We still have a lock that malfunctions or does not work as expected under certain climate conditions. We can either choose to ignore that, but we can't ignore that because not everybody's going to have a window they can crawl into. Not everybody is going to have that plan B. And if this is the type of lock that can suddenly freeze, are there people who've been locked in their own garden sheds or garages, or have people been in dangerous situations by suddenly the lock is freezing and malfunctioning and now they can't get out? So to me, this is a problem we fix because it could mean safety and danger ramifications and not just the comical possibility that someone has to climb in their own window. Yeah, or learn how to pick their own lock from the lock-picking lawyer. So Okay, thanks to the person who asked that. Hopefully you're here and hopefully that helps. Next question. What are your thoughts on lots of organizations mandating returns to the office? How do you think this impacts UX? Nick, you look ready for
I love
action.
that. That's a
go.
juicy question. Thank you for asking that one, Asker. I've been so conflicted, and I've thought about this probably like you guys so much. The bottom line is that we need a better definition of hybrid, and I believe we need a formal definition of hybrid. Maybe that's locally defined or not universally defined. You see what I mean? But I just some kind of greater comprehension of what that actually means, along with the expectations and the standards. The reason why I say that is when I was learning as a junior and as a midweight, I always had a senior and a lead and other mids sitting around me. And as I'm wireframing in Axure, I could just ask a question, or I'm doing an analysis. Hey guys, I couldn't understand what they said in the transcript, and they're all listening in, or, oh wow, did you notice that? And all kinds of stuff. The point being is it's not just me, team of one. I'm on a team of people on a bank of desks, and that as a learning experience, that's unbeatable. Sorry, you can't learn that way working from home. And that's my axe to grind. That's my angle, is that I just fundamentally, we all know, Darren, Debbie, anybody else who kind of teaches, it's always better physically together. But the post-pandemic world is a much more remote kind of a thing. There are benefits. It means people around the world can attend events like Debbie or my trainings type stuff, right? That's great. It's really beneficial. You couldn't have done it any other way. And it is effective. Debbie gets great feedback. We get great feedback. It's all good. But it can be so much more when you're physically together. And that's just the truth, unfortunately. I think everybody's adapting to learn better remotely, and that's a really good thing. But in terms of team working and just the way that I know that we all learn, the office working's got a lot of good. I don't think mandating returns to the office, like saying you will go back to the office or bad things are going to happen, is good whatsoever. I want to categorically state that. Okay, that's not my position. So we can't go back to where we were, but we don't really know where we're going, and that's the real trick. And that's what I want to get solved. Is if you ask me, if I'm king of the world and I get to decree how we work, what would work for me, not necessarily for everybody, but I think what would work for me is like Tuesday and Wednesday, or maybe Wednesday and Thursday, physically in the office. That's it, right? There are organizations who are remote first from which this doesn't apply. But for everybody else who was at the office before the pandemic, I think that's what the return is like. Another quick caveat, there's none of this rush hour bullshit between 8, as long as you rock up before kind of 10:30 or something, right? And you broadly cover it, that's what we're at. I mean, the thing that's stopping everybody is that hateful commute, the cost of it all, the illness that came from it, and all that trash. So if we can get rid of that, allow people to get kids to school and then get on the way to work without clock watching and punching people in and out, I think lots of great things can happen. But this black and white push me, pull you bullshit is not going to work, right? It's a tug of war, and it's not going to work.
And before I comment on that, we have a comment from Madeleine saying, hello, Debbie and Dr. Nick. Kudos to Dr. Nick for the State of UX hosted by UX Oxford. Really great presentation.
Thank you.
Yep. Solomon says, I think companies will have to be honest about the type of productivity gains they claim are only possible through in-person collaboration. Chi Huat says, I saw a YouTube video that explained why companies want people back in the office. It's about real estate value and rental fees that affects the company valuation and shareholder value. Yeah, so ultimately, I would have to say I am more pro-remote work than Dr. Nick might be. I think that I've had enough years working remotely to kind of bring into my virtual experiences that in the moment collaboration and, ooh, let me share my screen and show you this thing in Axure. And I think maybe I've gotten that down a little bit more than the average bear because I've been working remotely most of the last 27 years. And I haven't always been on site. So I tend to be more pro remote work. I think it is something I prefer personally, but I also find that people with various disabilities and diagnoses and conditions sometimes prefer it or need it. But one thing I definitely agree with Dr. Nick is what does that remote work look like? Because there are a couple of companies who posted jobs and they said, hybrid, in the office 2 days a week. And I said, here's an interesting question. I can get to your office 2 days a week. You're in Germany, I'm in Italy. Let's say I'm willing to take your job and I'm willing to grab an EasyJet flight at my own expense and come up to your office in Germany and spend 2 days there and fly home. What do you think? And they were like, no, we can't consider you. You have to be in Germany. And I said, then I want to know more about this because I have the right to work in the EU. I'm telling you I'll come into your office. Why do you need me in Germany? Usually they don't even know. And so I really love, it's such a great point that we have to thank Dr. Nick for, that we have to figure out, what does this mean? There was another job I was being considered for that was in London, and the person who was recommending me for the job, it lives like a 3-4 hour train from London. And I said, is someone messaging me? I'm hearing a weird beepy sound.
Not me, man.
Okay, sorry. It was somebody accidentally sent a flood of LinkedIn messages to me by mistake. So the person who recommended me for the job in London, they live a 3-4 hour train ride outside of London. I'm a 2.5 hour plane ride from London. Who's got the longer commute? It's probably about the same when all is said and done, but why can't I grab an EasyJet flight, be a Gatwick, and be in the office and fly home? Or here's another hybrid interesting idea. What if I flew to your office, I was there for a week, and I come in every other month for a week? Like, I think we have to talk about who do we need where and why. When I was working at Macy's some years ago and I was in the San Francisco office and I had just been given permission to work remotely and I was going to move away from San Francisco and save some money, one of the leaders in the UX department said, well, no, we need you here in person. And I said, why? And they said, you like to whiteboard with people, right? And I said, no, I use Axure and I just share my screen. And they said, we thought UX people like to whiteboard. And I said, but we have online tools for that now. And they said, we should really have you in the office. And I said, well, my product manager is in Las Vegas, my developer is in Brazil, and my UI designer is in Canada. Why should I be in a San Francisco office? They couldn't answer that. So I think we really have to figure out who we need where and why. And if our developers can be in India, and if our QA people can be in Brazil, why do I have to be in the office? We somehow figured out all this other stuff. It's just amazing. We've got Hung here. Good to see you. Hung says, you've expounded on the relegation of experienced designers in favor of less experienced but more visually focused designers. Hold on. That seems like a question. Let me add that question to the list. Sorry about that. And Solomon, looks like you have a question as well that I have to add to the list about managing workers.
Cherish.
And Cherish.
I haven't done any lab-based user research since pre-pandemic. I can't say for anybody else, that's just my perspective, but it feels like the pandemic killed lab-based research. It just feels like it from my perspective, when I spent my whole career in UX labs before the pandemic, right? Yeah,
and I'm still for flying to or going to where people are to meet them in their environment where possible. Let's throw Solomon's question in as a quick follow-up question because I think it's related here. There's an underlying issue we're not talking about and won't because it makes people uncomfortable. What is the best way to manage knowledge workers?
That's a huge question, and that's a very big depends type question. It depends on so many different factors. I'm going to talk to Adaptivist, which is my employer, my permanent. I think they're doing an amazing, unique job in the kind of corporate world by being not corporate and managing engineers, knowledge workers at scale by not managing them. it's a specific kind of a management style, which is, I think, formerly known as laissez-faire, which in French means like leave them to it. But it creates a kind of very high positive chaos, which is also very productive, very innovative. Not bureaucratic. It's some interesting stuff. I don't know what the best way is to manage knowledge workers. The best way to manage knowledge workers is the best way for those particular knowledge workers at that particular culture in that particular organization. I don't think I've never been a big fan of broad brush management. I'm always, the needs of my users or my team or whatever that is, rather than go to the handbook and look at the laws of whatever, that's.
Yeah. I also say my management style is play to your audience, because everybody who I manage is going to have different needs, especially if they have any disabilities or diagnoses or conditions or deep personal preferences. So I've got to figure out what that is. Some people want a lot more talking and meetings and support, and other people want to be left alone a little bit more. So I call it play to your audience. I've got to meet that person where they have needs and support them as best as I can. So let's get to the next question. And of course I hit the wrong button, so give me 1 second. Okay, next question. I recently found out that some of my past internships I no longer do. My design work is no longer being used. Despite this happening, should I still talk about what I did for these companies in my portfolio and resume? Yes.
Yeah, 100%. That's a no-brainer. We'll just slam dunk that one. Yes, you did it. You evidence it. It's done. Just because it's not being used, it hasn't got like a sell-by date on it, or like, you know what I mean? It's like, you did that work. Here's the evidence. Here's the proof. The evidence, the supporting evidence. It might have been that a new person came in and said, "Right, I just want to reskin the lot." That really happens all the time, or stuff happens. Or a competitor does a thing and everybody freaks out and wants to copy them and throws the baby out with the bathwater and all of that good knee-jerk thinking. But that is not going to destroy your history. If it did, it would be a bit like Back to the Future. Is it Back to the Future? Yeah, Back to the Future, where Marty's on stage and his family's disappearing, right? In the guitar headstock, the photograph. Just because the assets that you've made are disappearing doesn't mean to say your career is disappearing behind you, right? So yeah, chill. You're good.
Yeah, and I would basically add to that, sometimes I go back to my portfolio, and at the very end where I've talked about kind of the final results of the thing, sometimes I say, this was live for approximately X time, or at least X time, but was later redesigned after I left the company. So and that way, if they do take a look at it later and they go, "Oh, this doesn't look like what you did," there's plenty of things that I've done that that have ended up later being redesigned. So it's never done. It's always a project in progress.
Or look at it this way: nothing in my portfolio. I've been a researcher now for what, like 6, 7, 8 years, as a dedicated UR. Everything in my portfolio that's design or IA has been superseded. Everything. So in theory, my portfolio is dead, right? No, I've still done the work. It's there. It's just, it's not evidenceable. I've got an award. I won an award, a design award, a recruitment design award for work that I did on an EY website, and I keep that in there. But obviously that was like 7 or 8 years ago. That site has now been replaced by something better, or it won't be better. It'll just look different. Nothing will be better.
Nothing's better than you, Dr. Nick. You're the best.
No, I'm amazing. Everything's amazing. Everything I touch turns to gold.
That's amazing, Dr. Nick. So the next question, somebody sent in a link to a LinkedIn article and wanted our opinions on it, and I just want to kind of say, wrong show.
Yeah, a bit like GPT at Mopo.
Yeah, it's probably written by GPT. So to the person who sent in that link, please know that I've put it on the list for the Friday show. The every other Friday we do a show called Practicing Critical Thinking, where people send me articles and tweets and social posts and all kinds of things, and they ask, what's your opinion of this? Does this make any sense? Is this BS? So please know that because I don't have this show set up to show an article and read through the article and take all the time, we do that every other Friday. So please come back next Friday. This Friday I will be flying back from the conference I'm speaking at, but I promise I will go through the article you sent next Friday. Sorry to make you wait a week and a half, but based on what you sent, you already think this thing was crap, and you're probably right. So, so thank you to the person who sent that in, but I'm going to save that for practicing critical
You know what?
thinking.
Also, drop me that link as a PM on LinkedIn, and I'll have a quick look. I'm intrigued.
Okay, I already put it away. Give me 1 second to figure out how I'm going to send this to you, but, nah. Okay.
Don't worry about that. Whoever sent it to you, Debbie, send it to me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'll send it to you on LinkedIn now, Dr. Nick, but just know we're not going to go through it because we don't have the time, and it's probably crap. Okay, so let me go to the next question. Let's put this up. Hi, Jean-Francois. Bonjour. Good to see you again. Have you been? Is our podcast ready? Is it? So let me see. He interviewed me a few weeks ago when I was in Quebec. Okay, so this question says, as a recent boot camp grad who fell into that trap, I'm completely redoing my portfolio after watching our episodes 148 and 187. Thank you. What recommendations would you give to someone in my position? I think all of my recommendations are in episode 148, but let's pass it over to Nick. Nick, portfolio recommendations for someone coming out of a boot camp.
Oh, fine, because they look like police codes to me. It's like that's
No,
Delta
those
CX
are my episode
lingo.
numbers. You've been hanging out with Ari too much. They're not police codes. They're episode numbers.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I don't know. So that relates to portfolios post boot camp, right?
Yeah, you post boot camp. What's your advice for post boot camp portfolios?
So we're going to make a couple of assumptions here that your portfolio, your boot camp stuff is all. When I say artificial, it's all, not real world projects. It's all stuff that's come out of the boot camp.
Practice projects, maybe.
Yeah, practice projects and that kind of stuff. It's a tough one because I ignore all that stuff. The important thing is to show the structured learning and obviously the narrative, which is critical to any portfolio. But more than that, I can't give you any great advice. I think Debbie's probably in a much better position to give you advice. Yeah, I can't help you really with the boot camps. I give them a wide berth, and I try to tell people just to don't fall into any of those traps. From my perspective, a real project is a good project, even if it went bad and it doesn't look good and all of that stuff. I love the learnings and the narrative and the story that I get from the junior or the midweight portfolio when you've got a project that's gone wrong. When it's all shiny shit and it doesn't tell me anything, it's hard to glean anything from. So I would just say be real, keep it real, but make sure you surface that real. And make it simple. Don't blurt it all out. You know what I mean? I don't want to have to read an essay, but I do want some key bullet points about key strengths, key weaknesses. What did you learn from that project, and how did it improve you as a practitioner, and how did it meet the project goals or product goals? That would be me, but over to you, Deb.
Yeah, I went through all this in episode 148, so I'm not sure there's anything I can add to myself. Jean-Francois is saying, even if it's not real world, I need them to explain the process. I don't care about the beauty part of the interface, and I think he's kind of an old school UX guy like us. Solomon says, show you can think critically and tell a story. Cover the reasoning behind your design decisions. Yeah, I think if I had to comment on some of the bootcampy portfolios I've seen in the last 6 or so months, I find that a lot of people, because of the nature of the assignment from the boot camp, very often they've started, the portfolio project starts with problem solution. And I go, oh, this isn't UX. You can't start out with, here's what I think the problem is, which very often is a guess or assumption about a population or a behavior, and then here's my solution. And I go, how'd you get there? And usually they go, well, this is what I think is the solution to the problem. Now I'm going to make an empathy map. And now I'm going to talk to 3 people who all happen to be my sister. And I'm going to talk to, and I go, okay, unfortunately, this looks to me like you're not ready for a UX job because this doesn't make sense. At the same time, I understand that this is what the school unfortunately taught you. This might be all that you know. It might be the best that you know. I'm not saying you're bad at UX. I'm just saying this this doesn't look like a UX project. If it just doesn't. If I say, Nick, people are thirsty, problem statement, and Nick goes, great, I'm going to make sure the solution is giant American cup. Everybody needs one. Now I'm going to interview Dr. Nick. Dr. Nick, do you need a large cup to drink water out of because you're so damn thirsty? And so I think that a lot of times I see things and I end up saying in my portfolio reviews, did you really do this in this order? Did you really go problem, solution, survey that proves your problem or solution is magically right? Interviews that magically prove your problem and solution are right. You know, like there's a quote I've been saying to people for about 20 years, which is, if you're only hearing positive things, you're asking the wrong questions, the wrong people, or both. And so I think that the problem with a lot of these prompts people get from their school is they're not challenging them, they're not pushing back, and they're not trying to do a better job because they think, well, I have to do what the school said. And my thought is, the school's going to pass you and graduate anyway. Do a better project.
Yeah,
you think the school's going to no one fails out of these schools.
No, you're right. And these schools are generally teaching some variant of UX design or UX UI or whatever that world is. What they are not teaching is any form of user-centric UX. And that's the world that we all come from. And that's why it all goes horribly wrong, because when you try to evidence that in a portfolio, all the thinking is wrong. Once your thinking's wrong, all your outputs are going to be wrong. And it doesn't matter how you shine your portfolio at that point. It doesn't matter. You're just rolling it in glitter, and that's not working.
Yeah, my bot is automatically triggered when someone says design thinking. I hope everyone's enjoying that. I have a bot that recognizes when someone says
I do love that.
thinking.
That's great. It needs a more severe reaction, like fire or something.
I can't trigger. I can only trigger words, but there you go. So yeah, these are my suggestions. I'm amazed how many people say to me later, you know, I did this project for my boot camp and I'm not even sure it makes any sense. I'm not even sure I did anything right. I'm not sure, but I followed what the boot camp said. And I said, well, did anybody check in with your project as you were doing it and say, this looks good or this doesn't look good? No, they just looked at it at the end. And then I go, everybody who's in a boot camp, forget it. Just do what you know is right. If you've been doing your own studying and you think the boot camp is not teaching you the best way, they're going to pass you anyway. You might as well do a better project. Don't start with problem solution. Start with, I think I want to solve something around thirst. Let's go discover what that is. Yeah, Solomon says they're teaching workshops. That has become increasingly true. Just do a design sprint, just do some design thinking, and that's certainly not user-centered design, human-centered design, or UX design. It's unfortunate. But again, and I'm so amazed. Someone posted something to our Slack today. Our Slack's free to join, everybody. We have Discord also, deltacx.com/links. And it was like, Baymart or somebody just created their own UX courses. And my thought was, to train who? We have 700,000 people who want to get into UX who took Google's Coursera course who can't get in. Was the problem that we weren't giving people enough courses? Help.
Yes, it's all messed up.
It's all messed up. Let's go to the next question where it'll probably be further carnage. Okay. This question says, I'm on the content design team, and we've been pressured to prove our value. We're seen as editors rather than UX designers. UI UX designers don't get this pressure. I find it hard to isolate content from design and say something like, these words led to that result. Any thoughts on this? Are some things just unprovable?
Let's not, that last bit we'll leave for the moment because that's a deep, heavy question. I'm assuming that you're in the content design team as a UX designer.
No, I'm assuming they're a content strategist / writer.
Oh.
Because they're saying we're seen as editors.
No,
I'm on the content design team.
Designers.
We're pressured to prove our value. We're seen as editors. I find it hard to isolate content from design and say, look how these words led to results. So they're being asked to prove their value as content designers.
I don't think they're content designers. I think they're UX designers, but they're in a content design team. And I think what's going on here is they're being treated like CMS people, like, you know, just edit and update and change type thing, like you would do a copywriter in the old days of, can you just change that paragraph or whatever that means. I could be wrong. That's how I'm interpreting it. I find it hard to isolate content from design. Okay, so proving value, establishing value with regards to any form of content. The simplest and cleanest way for attribution terms is in MVT, right? Multivariate testing. What you can do is take a number of different variants, A, B, C, D, and E, which are all controlling for the visual graphic design, but what you're varying are the words, right? And one will outperform the others, or one would hope so. Then you can attribute words to value, right? We sold more shoes because we used the words pretty please on a blue button instead of the words buy now. You know, these sorts of things. That's the cleanest and the easiest way to do it, because attribution is historically hard in our world. That's the easiest way to do that one. And you're lucky because it's content. It's one of those quantifiable, concrete, relatively easy things to vary, right? When you get into color and hue and hue, saturation, tint, that sort of stuff, it gets a little bit messier. But yeah, try stuff out. That would be my quick and easy answer. Yeah.
And my answer relates to some things I mentioned in my Customers Know You Suck book, which is companies must absolutely stop asking people to prove their value. We don't do this evenly. We don't ask a product manager their value. We don't ask a developer their value. So why are we asking researchers, designers, content strategists, and other people to prove their value? That conversation must be incredibly awkward. And my suggestion, depending upon how ballsy you feel, because obviously this suggestion is not going to be for everybody based on personality or culture. But if someone says, you know, why are you here? Prove the value of what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. Knowing me, I would say, you opened this job. You interviewed candidates. You hired me. If you opened this job and you don't know the value of this job, we have a big problem. You're basically telling me you hired me and you don't know why you hired me. You're telling me you don't know what I do. Is that what you're telling me right now? Now, of course, that's me. And you know, I don't recommend that for everybody. As I like to say, ask your doctor if Debbie is right for you. But yeah, Solomon says, you hired me, you're paying me, you saw value at some point, what changed? Yeah, so obviously not everybody is comfortable having that conversation. But what I've been trying to say to leaders and other people, and it's in my book, is stop asking people to prove their value. If you don't believe that a job has value, just cut it. Don't put the people through the absolute shitty mental health experience of having to prove why they work at your company when you opened the job, fielded 200 applications, put multiple people through multiple interviews, probably gave this person a challenge to check that they're good at what they do, and now you're telling them you don't know what they do and you're not sure if they have value and prove it. I would probably be applying elsewhere. Nick, I'll get to you in a second. Shweta says, I was under the impression your product needed a redesign because it's ugly. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I don't go that far. But yeah, I might have a few things to say about you opened this job, you took applications, you put me through 3 interviews, 5 interviews, 6 interviews. You put me through a challenge. You made sure I was talented and experienced and right for this job. And now you're asking me to prove my value? Are you asking that to any other roles? Are you telling me you don't know why this job exists? How about you say something now?
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate because I'll be your boss in this scenario where you've
Go
just
ahead.
said that to me.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say, well, Debbie, actually, it's not. I'm not questioning anybody else's roles. I'm questioning yours, Debbie Levitt, right? And okay, let me be harsh. This isn't me being Captain Wonderful or look how amazing I am. This is not that. Genuinely, I've never been asked to prove my value at any point. A large chunk of my career has been freelancer, and you wouldn't ask a senior freelancer to prove their value because you just wouldn't with value, right? So there's that. But what I'm trying to get ahead of is I'm continually demonstrating value anyway. Like I should, if somebody needs to ask you to demonstrate your value, you're not demonstrating value. That's the point, right? You've left it too late. You've not done the right things. You haven't socialized your hard work, or we haven't done it in the right digestible way. For me, that's a massive red flag that you might be doing value, but you're not expressing it. There's a disconnect in perception. That's a really big deal. So what I'm trying to say is get ahead of it, always be delivering value. In sales terms, they talk about always be closing. You should, like in our terms, you should always be valuing kind of thing. And that might be standing up in a show and tell. That might be doing a demo or a town hall in front of the whole company, by role modeling, by bringing the voice of the customer, show reels, all of that good stuff. Your
Results
insight.
of the testing that Nick talked about earlier show how you
Yeah.
changed some text on a page or some words on a button, and
Yep.
this number that we love went up by this much.
Yeah. People love things. I'll tell you where I win. Things like champion and challenger, right? This is how it was. And we had an idea that if we made it bigger and whiter, that it would do something. And we did that. And so here's A and here's B. And guess what? B outperformed A by 30% because of bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. That's it, right? Low effort, low friction, easy to acquire. And that's how they go, oh, wow, that Bob is a dude. That Mary's amazing. Did you see her at the show and tell? That's in real terms, that's value. That's being appreciated, being noticed, adding value. Like when Bob or Mary leaves, they'll go, oh man, I can't believe they left. They were awesome, right? That's value in real terms.
Good points. I have also not been asked to prove my value, so I feel you there. Here is our next question. It came in the chat from Hung. Hopefully he's still here. And he said, I think this is pointed probably at Nick. You've expounded on the relegation of experienced designers in favor of less experienced but more visually focused designers. What do you believe is needed to realistically change this market? And I guess I'll answer that too, even though I think it's pointed at you. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think it is. Hi, Hang. It's a great question to ask, Hang. I hope you're still here for this. I'm going to focus obviously on the word realistically because it's capitalized, and that's what this all, I'm going to say hangs on, but you get it, right? This is what the crux of that question is. We all know what the magic wand solution is, but what's the practical answer? The practical answer I maintain is in design leadership. And I was so proud of Debbie this week because she woke up, had a coffee, and then just destroyed them with a Sparks tune.
Oh,
Wasn't
yeah.
it? Yeah, you did.
Yeah,
you did.
Oh, God. Okay, yeah, that was for people who missed my LinkedIn post because LinkedIn killed it in the algorithm. And I don't usually have coffee. I'm allergic to caffeine. But there's a new Spark song called "When You Leave." And even though I don't think it's necessarily about the workplace, I was listening to it. I listened to it twice in a row, and I was like, this is an anthem for everybody who's ever been celebrating out of their minds or waiting to celebrate when a bad leader leaves an organization, because it's like, they'll be breaking out the hard stuff when you leave. There will be salsa on the carpet when you leave, and it's like, it's just these hilarious. Yeah, there are these hilarious descriptions of all the things that'll happen when you leave. Now, my best guess, knowing Sparks, is it's about parents leaving teens alone to fool around and drink. But I still thought it was really, it still, kind of made me think like, oh yeah, I felt that way at a job when they finally got rid of that bad director, and it was like, oh yeah, they'll be breaking out the Xbox when you leave.
Well, I think, and hang to your question, right? I think there's something really seriously wrong with design leadership these days. Because
Agree.
if you go back, the UX gold rush, I put it at around 2014, 2015. Darren puts it earlier, 2011, 12. But whenever UX became overly popular and UX UI was born around 15, 16, sometime around that time, we're now like, what, 7 or 8 years beyond that. And all of those people that were in boot camps and all those people that were art directors and recruiters and everybody that wanted to be UX have been in senior leadership positions for some time, or they're in leadership positions. And in order to realistically change this market, we need to, and this is the controversial part, because I don't know if it's realistic, we need design leadership to understand user centricity at a fundamental, visceral, core level, because that's what UX UI did. It destroyed that user-centric thinking that we were talking about earlier on with regards to portfolios, right? You can't put a good portfolio narrative together if you're just thinking the wrong way, and people have got the wrong design leadership in most cases, and they're hiring the wrong people. They're hiring people in their own image. You know, designers going to hire designers instead of UXers. And so this is the problem. We've got these huge triangles, like pyramids, corporate organization pyramids, with a hipster designer art director at the top, who then filled in the whole pyramid with people like that. And some of them being fired. Some of them have got 2-year PhDs at the top of them, and those guys aren't any good either, because they don't understand UX either. And that's when Jared Spool, who talks about over intellectualization of research, is actually correct. So what I believe is realistically to change the market, we've got to, this is why I'm being so noisy, is to try to get people to accept user centricity. Not this Figma versus Axure battle, that's detail. And it will get solved by a Figma plugin that brings the power that needed at some point in the coming years. We need every leader across the board to understand that user centricity is what drives performance, and that user centricity is a process, and that they can do whatever they want to in their culture with their teams, but that's what you've got to fit into. That's what works. And there's so much pushback against it, and there has been for 5-6 years now. And the longer, that's why, you know, when I post something about with a trajectory curve and the damage that UX UI has done, that's so on point, because the longer that these guys argue against this point, the longer we flatline until our trajectory stays flat. The only way to improve this is to get seniors back in. Actually, that's the answer. Get seniors in to advise these design leaders, because they won't have us as design leaders, but at least bring us in as your right-hand people, as advisors, trusted advisors, to help you with the strategy, help you with the hiring, because that's what they don't have. They're hiring the wrong people and enacting the wrong strategies, and it's getting them all fired. And they're all shitting themselves now, so I'm hoping they're opening their minds a bit. Sorry, I'm ranting a bit.
No, you're not. I think we were looking for that. So I'm going to give my answer because it's really, really different. And it turns out my answer is the hat I said I would buy at Disney World, but I could not find an appropriate hat. And instead of an accountability hat, I bought a Sage Advice hat. But just to debut a new hat on the channel, Sage Advice.
The Yoda!
It's green. I have a green screen, so it's green screening it out. But Sage Advice. But I believe the answer, and I'm serious about this, Hung. I believe the answer comes down to one word: accountability. Now, Baby Grogu is not necessarily the center of accountability. He's Jedi tricks. But so I need an accountability hat. A friend suggested Merida. I'll deal with that later. Accountability, and here's why. So if we had accountability, someone would be saying, gee, that A/B test failed. B is worse than A. A was not that great. We were trying to make it better. B was worse. Holy cats. What is going on our team that we know so little that we made something that was worse than what we already have? What about accountability for, I have seen teams that have spent 500,000 euros on a project that went straight to hell. I have seen teams that have spent 3 to 6 months on a project that went straight to hell. No one was held accountable. No one got their budget cut. No one got demoted. No one was put on a performance improvement plan. Nobody's work was more strictly overseen in the future. I'm not saying you have to fire everybody. That accountability isn't immediate firing. Accountability is saying this person or these people are responsible for this. At all my years at Macy's, all the product managers would say to me was, you don't get to make a decision, Debbie. I'm going to make the decision because as the product manager, I am ultimately held responsible for the product and how this new feature or change goes. And I would go, great, I'll wait. I never saw anyone held accountable for all of the failures we had. We had to roll back shit. We had to pull emergency kill switches on stuff, and nobody was held accountable. So to me, oh, hi, Joel Embar. Good to see you. Hung says, Baby Yoda ate the frog eggs. No accountability at all. So true. Baby Yoda has caused a little bit of carnage. So wrong hat, but fun hat. So to me, the bottom line is accountability. As soon as there's accountability, someone says, wow, we did 10 design sprints this month and we've got fuck all. We released nothing to market. Our ideas were shitty. We didn't innovate a damn thing. Who's responsible for all these fucking design sprints? Your budget is now cut. No more design sprints for you, puppy. As soon as we have any accountability, something's going to change. Because as soon as there's accountability, I'm not going to have an engineer say, let me call a couple of customers and ask them what they want. When that turns out to be poor information that misleads us, that engineer would be held accountable and possibly told, you don't get to call customers anymore. If think about all of the ifs. Think about all of the what ifs that would stop happening if we had any accountability at all. If anybody who said, I'm responsible for this, or I'm the team leader, I'm responsible, or I'm the product director, I'm responsible. Think about if any of these people who claimed to be responsible or accountable were held accountable or responsible. And to me, that's where this all changes. Because yes, I agree with Nick that our leadership has failed us, that the wrong people have been installed in leadership, promoted into leadership. People have privately messaged me on LinkedIn saying, I know I failed up. I know that I'm an imposter. And now I'm in this job and I don't know what to do. I don't even know where to start. And so if we had accountability, I say to people, hey, how is your job going to measure, especially leadership? How does your job measure that you're doing a good job? How are you measured? Oh, well, I'm responsible for how many times people click this button. Hold on. That's the wrong way to measure your job. Maybe we measure the project by button clicks or other metrics. That shouldn't be the end all and be all of your job, getting people to click the button more. Your job is, especially if you're in leadership, how are you leading? How are you planning? How are you strategizing? Where is the accountability for any of this? Chihuat says lots of creative directors from ad agencies are suddenly UX leaders. And I go and look at their, that's what Nick was talking about. And I go and look at their LinkedIn and I see no UX. No UX. I see nothing related to UX.
If Debbie or I, as senior lead UXers, wanted to go over into the design world as art or creative directors, we would be laughed out. We wouldn't even get in the studio. We wouldn't get in the door, past reception. They'd be like, you're a complete imposter. Go away, become a junior, climb the ladder, come back in 10 years once you've got the experience. But yet somehow they think it's completely to walk into our practice and they've taken all of our jobs. And okay, so with regards to accountability, I would suggest there is some accountability going on today, but these leaders are throwing their teams under the bus and making them redundant to save their own face or job. I'd say, because I think also maybe this accountability is being asked in terms of that value question we discussed a little bit earlier. What blows my mind in terms of the accountability thing, I came from IT beforehand. I was a chief technical officer in the IT world in the dot-com boom. Working at internet service providers and stuff, we all had pages and all this kind of stuff so that if a server goes down, if something happens, it's red alert, people are on call, we get it rebooted, we get it back up again within an SLA of X amount of minutes, right? My first e-commerce job, somebody shouted over, yeah, the website's down again. And everyone was like, yeah, okay. And I don't think anything happened for like the next day. Meanwhile, that's like 24 hours of zero sales, zero anything, and negative brand. And at that point, I realized digital has an accountability problem because there's no urgency. There's no urgency because of that accountability. In IT, it's completely different. In digital, we have a unique industry in that we are this weird offshoot of marketing that's got a tiny sprinkle of tech on it. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's the real problem. Too much marketing thinking, too many art directors driving our ship. And it's the ship that we created, right? So the ship that we created is being driven by other people that isn't expressing the value that we originally had for it. That's where we're at.
Yeah, and to even add more to this, and then some of you have asked follow-up questions in the chat. I'm going to put those up in a moment. Again, if we had accountability, let's say the project goes wrong. Let's say we find out the design stinks and it wasn't good. Then I would want, and this has never happened in my career, I would want someone to come to me and go, Debbie, you were the designer, or you were the researcher and the designer. What happened here? This design ended up causing a wave of calls to customer support. We had a couple of clients cancel. We want to hold you responsible for this. What happened? Why is this design so bad? Then I get to say, great, let's talk through the project. So nobody talked to me about the project before the project existed. I didn't get to estimate my own time. Somebody told me I had 7 minutes for research and 3 minutes for design. I asked for more time and I was told no. I asked for more resources and I was told no. I asked for the budget to do some research and pay incentives to participants so I could talk to real humans and learn from them, and you said no. And so essentially you gave me a job and you told me you've got 2 days to give your best guess as to what this design should be. I asked you to usability test it and you said, no, we'll see how people like it when it goes out live. So yeah, I would love for you to hold me accountable, but ultimately the problem is not, I wasn't your problem. I'm not your root cause. The root cause is the person who decided that I get no time, no budget, no resources, and I'm left guessing. So you think you want to hold me accountable because the design is the problem, but you're going to have to go a level up, above or below that to figure out who put me in the situation that I was in. So to me, if we have accountability, then someone comes to me and says, why was the design not good? There's a new slide that I'm using in all of my presentations that is new since the book, so it is not in your Customers Know You Suck book, but I'll be turning it into its own article soon, and so we'll have you'll have a way to see it in a vacuum. And I go through the many things that we can notice during a project, and once it's been released live, that tell us we were not working from the right or enough research. Because a lot of times people say, oh, well, the design ended up bad. We have a bad designer. We have bad design. And I say, hold on, that's probably not your root cause. Sure, you might have a bad designer. A lot of companies are not hiring great designers right now. But there's probably a root cause below that, where even if you had a good designer, what evidence were you working from? What evidence drove your strategies, your decisions, your products and services, your priorities? And so ultimately, accountability.
I'd go one step further. Call it insight, not evidence. Like, what insight drove that?
I call it evidence because I find in Agile and Scrum they use the word evidence a lot, and so it helps me speak the language other people are speaking. So I agree that insight is a good word, but I find that to some, not everywhere, but to some of our cross-functional teammates, that there's something a little bit fluffy about that, like insight, I see into something, what you don't see. It seems a little fluffy to some people, and so I go a little bit more straight for the part, and I just go, it's evidence. We either have evidence, we have good evidence, or we have bad evidence. We have enough evidence, or we're lacking evidence. What's the evidence? I mean, there's a whole evidence-based thing in Scrum, and so I'm just trying to use the language that makes sense to other people. Chihuat says, creative directors sure can put the power in PowerPoint. So we got a couple of follow-up questions during our rants, And Chad said, I agree, accountability is critical. How do you see accountability creating awareness of user-centered design as a solution for the business?
This is the lesson the world is learning the hard way, and probably will learn the hard way for quite a few years yet.
Agree.
This is what I don't like to end on a downer, but the
we got
only
2 more
way.
questions.
Oh, fine, okay. But strap yourselves in, guys, because people like Debbie, Darren, myself, like the old school of original UXers, we are user-centric practitioners by default, and we always will be. Not dinosaurs.
Just joking.
Yeah. What that user-centricity did was made UX a really high-performance, powerful, cool thing. We were doing cool projects, getting paid well, high visibility stuff. UX became really popular. Because everybody's taken just the visual bit. No one has been talking about user-centric design. No one on that side of the house. And so that means, because performance and accountability and productivity have all kind of gone out of the window, they're going to have to learn that what made Debbie and I and Darren and other people wonderfully great UXers was our user-centricity, not the pretty stuff that we made. And they're not listening to us on LinkedIn. They're arguing against us. There's a guy out there, John Griffin, who just keeps saying, I'm going to go keep doing my UX UI thing and blah, he's a creative director. And, I've got to respect his approach, but he's wrong, right? I mean, it's not going to work. It doesn't perform, and it's not UX. But that's the way he chooses to do things. If the market decides to keep firing and making redundant all these people because of low performance, at some point, somebody's going to have to ask the question about UX and user centricity, or at least user centricity is there to save the day, to bring the performance back. We just need old school original user centric UX back again. But to Hang's question about how do we do that, we can't with design leadership who are fighting against user centricity effectively. They don't understand it, so they don't want it, and they're railing against it. But it's the solution. They're firing the teams who are the agents of user centricity. So they're firing the solution, and we've been saying this since the redundancy started happening. It's really an ugly situation where people are saving themselves, firing people. It's super messy. They are going to learn the hard way. I can't give you an ETA on that. I really can't. What I can tell you is that UX, it may not be called UX, but some kind of user-centric practice is necessary. It is research-driven. And digital cannot exist without it, and it cannot rely upon AI for it either. But who knows what this new thing is, because it's called product design or behavioral design or something in that ilk. Who knows? We've got other fish to fry right now, bigger fish to fry, like user centricity foundations.
Yeah, I think that I agree with Nick that we're going to see some ugliness before it gets better, because you have to remember, when you think about the life cycle of creating product, especially digital product, but certainly services as well, it can take you 6 months or a year to know how something went. From the very early idea to planning when we're going to work on that, to any research or design or other things we do, to engineering, spending sprints on it, to it being a release candidate and going out to the public, either first as an experiment or then as a wider thing, and then we're waiting for surveys or customer support to come back. These are easily arcs of 6 months or more. And so that means that all of the shitty work people are having AI do right now, we're barely going to know the outcome of that until next year, because they're asking AI the wrong questions. They're asking AI to pretend to be the user. They're asking AI to come up with their product strategy. You're not going to know that didn't work out very well for you until metrics and numbers hit probably in Q1, because I'm talking to you in June 2023. You're not going to know until you look at Q1 and you look at your adoption, your your retention, your satisfaction, and other things that your company is counting, and you go, oh, that kind of didn't work. Oops. Okay, and then if there were accountability, the next question is where did we go wrong? But where there's no accountability, somebody goes, throw another dart at the dartboard, let's just try again. So hopefully accountability. So number one, I think it's going to get a little bit funky first because of that. It's going to take time for that to swing back around. Number two, we have the whole swing now from engineering led, where everything was agile, 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 pray at the holy altar of agile. Now it's product and product management and product led, and what some people are saying to me is product dictatorship. And I think that we're going to see product managers trying to be all things to all people. And if you look at product management training right now, they're teaching fake UX research, fake UX design.
Yep.
They're even teaching front-end development, as if you're just going to walk onto a team and go, fuck all y'all, I'm doing all your jobs. And
Yep.
and that is gonna make companies salivate at first. Hey, let's just hire a product manager. We can go fire 3 of those people. But eventually someone's going to figure out that didn't go well, but it's going to take a long time, and it's going to require that we have metrics in place and that we're honest with ourselves and go, wow, we didn't make our numbers, or wow, we had incredible losses there. So companies are unlikely to wake up to this stuff until they really feel the pain. And that's when we have to emerge, and that's why I tell people you have to use business related language. You have to say, hi, I'm here to solve your problems. I'm a problem finder and problem solver. And I am going to focus on making your customers join, be happy, and stay, because I'm going to focus on who they are and what they need. And sure, I'm going to marry that with your business goals and initiatives. I'm here to make you money, but I'm going to be making you money and helping you achieve your business goals, because I am going to be an expert on who your sweet spot target audiences are and what would really serve them best. And I'm going to help you blow past your competition, because we're going to stop doing these foolish things and we're going to really do the best for your users. Amy says, we'll send all the product managers to design thinking training. I think they've already gone.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Chihuat says, I heard a product manager say UX is making customer feel good that is intangible or easily measured by CSAT. If you've read my book, Chapter 8, you know that I don't like CSAT or any of these survey type ways of trying to measure satisfaction. They're all so badly flawed. But I think, Chad, to answer the question that's on the screen is, I don't think we're going to be able to keep doing the flag waving thing of, hey, don't you care about UX? And hey, user-centered design, it's so important. What I've started telling companies in some cases is, hey, are you ISO 9000 or 9001 certified? And often they proudly tell me, yes, I am. We are. I said, did you know human-centered design and customer centricity is baked into ISO 9000 and 9001? You have essentially promised to be customer-centric? And then people are like, show me where it says that.
ISO
well,
9241.
Good news. I've copied and pasted that into the book. So if you'd like to learn more about where that's in the ISO, it's in here. And I talk about ISO 9241, though not everybody cares about 9241, but there are pieces of it in 9000 and 9001, and lots of companies like to say, we're 9000, 9001 certified. Well, good. Then you need to be more customer-centric.
Gosh, 9241 sends shivers down my spine, and anyone with a master's degree, I think probably in HCI, probably, yeah. God, that was the last time I touched it. Let me just add to what Debbie said. That delay, that kind of performance delay, that kind of accountability delay, there's another delay that's very inherent to our market, and this is kind of for you, Hang. It takes easily at least 5 years to create a true senior, right? More like 8 in real terms, right? So we know that we haven't been making real seniors for a number of years, probably at least 5 years now. So even if we started today with the right mentorship and the right people in the right leadership positions, it would still take 5 years to start to get the leads and seniors together that we need to support the market. That was the real criminal, the criminality with the threat, the design leadership theft of UX, basically, because all that hiring in designers in their own image, all it did was kill the manufacture of true seniors. And that's what's killing UX, Hang, is the inability to transfer knowledge downwards. That trickle down, that mentorship, that in-house stuff is all gone because creative and art directors cannot mentor in the way of UX. They cannot put together the right strategy. And so they hire in people with fancy looking portfolios who are visual designers, and it all goes to hell. And that's where we're at. I also, for what it's worth, Deb, I think in X number of years, I can't tell you, maybe 2-3 years time, I think there's going to be some kind of equal and opposite reaction to product. I think product managers who are really overstepping so many boundaries and pissing off so many different practices, I think there might be, when we think back to project managers and compartmentalized stuff, the world was a lot cleaner and easier and made lots more sense. I don't know. The next people to ask to demonstrate their value are going to be product managers, for sure.
Especially with what they've been paying. So we've got 2 more follow-up questions to this whole conversation, and then we have a question from Pierre. Can you stay a little longer, Dr. Nick?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, great, thanks. So another follow-up question, I think this came from Shweta, was when I've asked the question about performance evaluations, they often talk about qualitative attributes, ownership and such. It's rather confusing. Should our jobs have a quantitative metric? This was back when we were talking about how do we measure our own jobs. Good night, Chihuat. Thanks for staying up.
Cheers, Chihuat. See you later, man. When I've asked this question about performance evaluations, they often talk about qualitative attributes, ownership and such. Should the job have a quantitative metric? Oh, God.
Like our job, like evaluating our jobs.
Yeah. What should we? What our own jobs in quantity? Quantify? Oh, right. Okay, fine. So, how many hours in front of users have you spent this month? Right, that kind of
like
question. Yeah, well, that's
Maybe.
great. I'd be a big fan of that. Because I like the pilot analogy. Pilots need 2,000 hours of flight time solo before they're allowed to do stuff or apply for a license. But I like that because it implies experience, actual in the air experience, right? I mean, the portfolio is trying to do that. It's trying to show your air miles or whatever, in UX terms. At first, I'm like, oh, that sounds horrible, but that's not such a bad idea. I don't see why not. I mean, validating and all that's a nightmare because people are just going to make it all up. And then you've got questions around, well, if somebody's got 300 hours, they should be expected to know X and Y or do it a certain way. And it does get a bit tricky like that. Another way of looking at it is this. You get somebody who says, I'm a 10-year UXer, but they've had 3 jobs at 3 multinationals. Well, they're going to have a pretty narrow horizon, right, over 10 years because you've got 3 cultures, 3 ways of doing things, 3, you know what I mean? Might have done hundreds of projects, but they're all within a certain kind of a framework. What am I saying? You can have like stupid hours of like research. You know what I'm saying? If it's bad research and you've got lots of hours of it, you're quantifying something that qualitatively wouldn't tell the same story. Do you see what I mean? It's not good experience. So I can see both sides of it. It's a toughie. I think you lose an awful lot when you quantify stuff. Obviously, you just do. You lose the quality because that's the nature of quantitative work. Okay, let me give you the other answer. The research answer is you need both because you need all perspectives. All right. Maybe quantitative is probably a bit practically a bit more difficult to do, but I can see the value in it for sure.
And what I wanted to add here is that a couple of years ago, I kind of invented a rubric for if I'm reviewing a UX practitioner's work, can I give it some scores based on different criteria? Then I have something that's quant. Then I have something I can watch over time to see if somebody seems to be getting better or getting worse. And I came up with 4 criteria that I was going to give a score, kind of like a 1 to 5, where 5 is like excellent, really fantastic work, and 1 is holy cats, big trouble here. And I would expect people to get some 3s and 4s where they have room for improvement. And the 4 criteria I came up with were critical thinking. So can I see from their work that they're using critical thinking? Attention to detail. A lot of our work, even if it's not visual design, still requires an attention to detail. So I'm looking for that. Next, I'm looking for technical excellence. And that's like, do you understand best practices? Do you understand foundational UX and behavioral and psychology concepts? Are you utilizing these things? Do you have a good range of knowledge of different paradigms and either research methods or design options? And then my last one was, I call it uses previous feedback. And that was really a measure of, if I am working with someone and I am kind of observing or scoring their work, and I've previously given them an idea or a suggestion or some training, the next time the same type of thing comes up, did they use the training and do something better, or are they making the same mistakes over and over again? And so kind of a measure of how much do I have to end up spoon feeding someone or repeating myself, unless there's a good reason for me to repeat myself. If they have a memory disability, okay, I get it. But outside of that, those are the criteria that I would score. So hypothetically, that's some flavor of quant where you could end up with some sort of score for your work that week on that project, and we can try to keep our standards high. Let's see, Solomon seems to have a question. I'm going to have to add it to the end because we've got someone before you. So let's go to a question that Hung asked as a follow-up to all of our discussion of user centricity and where the market is going and accountability. And Hung said, what if your advocacy for user centricity isn't moving the market in a positive manner? What should we be doing differently to affect real change?
I don't know. That's a simple answer, because I've been trying everything in my advocacy in both positive and negative ways, if you know what I mean. I've tried the nicely approach. I've tried the carrot and the stick, shall we say, right? I've tried the flattery and the you're wrong. And frankly, the egos that are involved, like we talked earlier, what right gives a art director or creative director to apply for a head of UX role when they've got no UX experience? But that's what's happened universally. So it doesn't matter how you approach them, what messaging I say and how I sort of broach the subject. They're in full shields up defense mode, and they know that they're imposters. They wanted to get into the cool UX thing. They weren't prepared to start back at the bottom. They have probably household and families and money things to support. So they can't go back down the ladder, but they're going to get into UX. There's nothing, you're trying to put it on us as advocates that we're the problem and we need to try to do something differently. It's these imposters that are gatekeeping us from our own roles. That's the problem. So with your recruiter hat on, Hang, that's the problem that we have. Most of us haven't had a look in or an interview for like 8 to 10 years. We're not even in consideration, because an art director or a creative director with the portfolio that they've got will always win. So it's the C-level that needs education, or whoever hires these people, that says hiring an art director with no UX experience into a UX function is a bad idea. And if you're going to mash together design and UX, that person, the director, whoever the head of that's running those two functions, needs experience on both, not just one, because UX suffers when that happens. So what should we be doing differently to affect real change? From my personal and professional standpoint now, is moving forwards anyway. Everybody knows my opinion. Everyone knows the answer. What I'm trying to do now is advocate for seniors and leads, so that, not for me personally, because I've got a job, but everybody else needs to be advising these creative directors. They need to be right-hand men, women, people, helping re-rail our practice. That's where it's at. I'm not changing for them. No way. I've changed enough. I've been put out enough by them. If they want my help, or they want our help, they should at least be gracious enough to ask for it. But if they won't do that, at least hire people to support.
And let me take a different approach on that answer. And that is, the note that I've written to myself here is, first of all, we know that a lot of companies claim to be user-centric or customer-centric. They claim that if they're product-led, we're going to satisfy business goals by really building what customers need and, read Teresa Torres's book and whatever. That's going to be the wave for the next year or so until people realize that didn't work. Just like right now, the worst flavors of Agile are truly coming home to roost and people are having to face some tough facts about Agile. But so the approach that I tend to take with companies is instead of talking about don't you care about user needs or blah, blah, blah. Yes, I come from the perspective of customer centricity, but when people, let's face it, when I say, hey, the customer needs a better whatever, people don't care. Nobody cares. There's no empathy. I don't care how many workshops you've done. There's no empathy for customers. Most companies don't care at all. Fine. So I just say to people, no problem. Let's just make sure that first of all, we're documenting our risks of this project having small or large failures. Next, let's make sure we have success criteria for this project. How do we know that all the time and money that we spent on this project was a good idea and worked out? Let's make sure we have success criteria. And finally, let's make sure we have metrics that tell us whether this project is doing well or not. Should we see a decrease in customer support calls? Well, okay, let's document that. We expect a 5% decrease in customer support calls. If our project goes out and there's a 10% increase in customer support calls, we got this wrong. And so I've been trying to nudge companies, even if they claim we don't care about the customers, we love lean startup, we just want to push out things. It's more important to be fast than to be good. We'll fix it later. It's good enough. And, we're agile. If they say all these things, I say that's fine. Let's document our risk. Let's document our success criteria, and let's document the metrics that are going to tell us if this project is going well or if this project is failing in small or large ways. And then we're going to take a look at how often we want to collect that data. This is just the professional thing to do. It doesn't even have to be associated with UX or CX or whatever. This is just project management and seeing a project through its longer arc. And that's where I want people to start to take a look at the business impact and why I do my Delta CX impact map, which again, we've done twice on this channel, so you can just search Google for Delta CX impact map. The one I did last week was probably better than the first one, so look in the conference presentations playlist on YouTube. But I think the more that we can tie the customer experience to business impact, the easier these conversations go. And that's what my Delta CX Impact Map is about. So if you can go and watch that, again, it's in the conference session playlist on the Delta CX YouTube channel. All this stuff is free. You just have to watch 5 seconds of ads, and I donate all the ad money to charity. So check that out, because I show other styles of impact mapping and why those are business-centric and they're going to push users to do things they don't want. So ultimately, we have to tie customer needs to business impact, and to say, hey, you think you don't want to spend time or money fixing our bad search and our bad search results? Okay, but I went and did a little digging, and I can see that we get this many customer support calls per month about search. What does that cost us? I asked somebody to do the math. I asked a call center manager to do the math on how much these calls or tickets cost us. You have to start putting it in these types of numbers for someone to care. Because if I say, hey, our search and search results suck, we really need to make these better, it'd be great for users, no one will care. No one will give you the time or budget to do this, because it's not on fire. We don't have the holy cats, this is so broken, and look at the money that the business is leaving on the table, and look at how much we're burning in time and customer support and mistakes and do-overs and whatever. So and again, that's what my book's about. Read it if you like, but that's it. We have to get people talking about these metrics, because I don't think we're going to hold people accountable anytime soon, but maybe we can hold the project accountable. Maybe people are too afraid to be held accountable, or they quit jobs too quickly. They're not even around to be held accountable. Hold the project accountable. We laid out these success criteria. The project went live. It's 2 months later. We didn't meet these criteria. We laid out these metrics for what it would look like. When we did this project, we were going to make people buy this, and we were going to do this, and we were going to decrease customer support calls. These didn't happen. This project did not succeed. This project failed, maybe in a small way, maybe in a large way. Let's talk about that. Agile says we're supposed to have a retro and talk about what went right or wrong and do better next time. Okay, let's use that. Be freaking agile. Your company thinks it's agile? Use the agile meetings and ceremonies and things. We have to call on the other stuff that happens in the companies, and they don't care about if it's user-centered. We have to show the business where they're losing money. Sorry for the long rant.
That's a good one.
So we've got 2 more questions. No, Solomon's was rhetorical, I think, so I'm not going to ask it.
Actually,
one more
Debbie,
question.
sorry.
Yeah.
What we need to do is allow these art and creative directors to reinvent. What we do in digital is we take something that's already there, give it a new word, and then everybody jumps on the new trend. So if they can reinvent user centricity with their own word, right, so that it's like invented there, then maybe it will get taken on board. And now that sounds a bit batshit crazy, but actually that's what might happen, right? You see what I mean? It's like as long as they get their own term for it and can own it, then that would be okay, as long as it's got the attributes of user centricity.
Oh, don't worry, I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'm hoping the book will be out in February.
Oh. Fair enough. What's
okay.
it called?
I'm not telling. Okay, so we've got what I think is our last question. Thanks to everybody for staying for the long 12-inch dance remix version. And this question was from Pierre, who may or may not still be here, but thank you, Pierre. As opposed to quant, the sampling method in qual is where the researcher has control over selecting participants based on expertise, experiences that are relevant to the research question. Doesn't this bring subjectivity? I wonder if Dr. Fine has any thoughts on how to talk about impartiality in qual research when the nature of qual has subjective traits.
Sure. Okay, so we're talking about screening participants effectively, like filtering them based on expertise. So if I'm selecting a persona, a segment, a participant because they have a certain experience with a product or a service or what have you, or they have certain attributes about them as a particular user, that's not necessarily introducing like a bias or a skew or a subjectivity problem. I'm just speaking to the users of my thing, right? Of the thing that I'm testing. However, I've had to talk people, when I've asked team leaders for participants from their team, this is where that does become a problem, because what they will tend to do is cherry pick their superstars, their high performers. And that's one teeny weeny little slice of that particular audience. I want low performers and everybody in between and everything else. So that's where you do get subjective problems when you start cherry picking by individuals or selecting by individuals. But when you're going by role or trait or experience or that kind of a thing, as I'm saying that, I'm realizing the extending your sample, or at least repeating your sample, or the sample size, effectively is there to try to kind of rule out or smooth out that subjectivity. So if you've got all people who drive Hondas, and I've got 5 of them, I'm going to get a much more reliable answer if I do it with 50 Honda drivers. See what I mean? But if I'm choosing Honda drivers and I'm going to pick my mate Dave and Mary and Bob, that's going to have a whole ton of bias in it, a whole bunch of bias in it, especially if I chose 50 of my Honda driving mates. Do you see what I mean? I hope that makes it clear the difference between kind of segmentation and filtering and screening. Yeah, that's basically it. The subjectivity is what sample size kind of smooths out, so you get the bigger picture and you get a more reliable answer.
And what I would add to that, because it was a great answer, is just that hypothetically, I think if you're doing quant research right, you're still trying to get some sort of target audience. You wouldn't just send a survey out to everyone on the internet and hope that some of your target audience is in there. You probably have a desired target audience or certain segments or personas in mind who should answer that survey or quantitative study, and there, of course, you need your statistically significant numbers, again, for the same reason, for that smoothing out, to make sure that the audience you have recruited or selected is representative of the population that you intended to target. So, hey, anybody who took any course on this stuff knows this stuff. I don't think I made that up. I didn't invent it. So I would say that doesn't mean that we are biased or that we're introducing subjectivity. To me, the opposite of that is the bigger mistake. So, for example, here's a simple newbie mistake we see often in my Slack and Discord communities. Someone who's learning UX has to do some sort of qual or quant study. They're doing a survey, they're doing a card sort. And they show up to our online community and they put a link and they go, hey, I need to find 20 people to fill out this whatever. Hey, please click on it and do it. Thanks. Bye. Here's the problem. Am I in the target audience? I remember someone once posted a card sort for people who use food pantries. Why are you posting that to Debbie's CX and UX Slack community? There might be some people who use food pantries, but there at least should be a screener survey or a qualifying question, because why should I fill out that card sort? I don't use food pantries. I'm not your target audience. I'm going to mess up your data. So I don't necessarily see it as, oh no, we've introduced subjectivity. I see it more as good recruiting to make sure we have a representative sampling. The subjectivity that I've seen is some companies, for example, will tell me, well, we found you a number of our customers that we want you to speak to, but we made sure to only find the happy ones. Yeah. Now that
British
is
Telecom
sampling bias. Go ahead.
Yeah. British Telecom sent me who had, like a UK cell phone provider or whatever. They sent me one of their surveys, and I'm not a BT mobile customer. I'm a BT internet customer. So they've obviously spammed that list, right? There's nowhere in this thing that says I'm not a bloody mobile user. And I answered 5 questions and it wouldn't let me out. And then I jacked out of it because it was a waste of time. But those first 5 answers completely polluted their database.
Sure.
And it's got no reliability or validity to it. Really big question. So what was the point in doing it in the first place?
Yeah, the one that I always complain about is I think a lot of people know what a giant fan I am of Disney World in Florida, and I'm part of their timeshare system. And before the pandemic, I was going once or twice a year. I used to have an annual pass. And then I moved to Italy. And the first question in all of Disney's satisfaction and post-visit surveys are, what country do you live in? And as soon as I said Italy, they kicked me out of the survey. And my thought was, are you sure? I mean, I understand that you believe that Italy is not a core target audience for Disney World in Florida, that Italians are more likely to just go to Disney in Paris or nowhere, or Gardaland on the cheap, but are you sure that's a criterion by which you want to eliminate me? Because I used to be an annual pass holder. I go once or twice a year. I'm bought into your timeshare system. I'm a super fan. I happen to move to a different place. So I think we have to be careful when we're screening about what we're screening for, because I think some of these demographics like location are skewed. They may or may not be how we want to eliminate people.
In your case, Deb, maybe because you were timeshare and all that stuff, because you're no longer a domestic potential or a domestic suspect or prospect or whatever you want to call it. They don't want your attitude or your info in that data set, because if they come out with a marketing thing, you're not a viable target, because it's unlikely you're going to have the same Disney interaction living in Italy than when you lived in, I don't know, New York or stateside, right?
But I would say just the opposite, because the average family saves up for a year and a half to go to Disney for about a week, and might do it once in their lives, or might do it a couple of times in their lives, because it's so expensive to go. And yet I'm going once a year, twice a year. I'm on a bunch of the mailing lists from different Disney departments. I'm following them on Instagram. Like, hypothetically, if they do start marketing something, I'm well aware of it. And so I think that even though what you're saying hypothetically has a point, that they might do marketing and advertising that I don't see because I'm not in the country, but I am following the channels. I'm subscribed to Instagram. I'm subscribed to some YouTube channels. I'm on the email mailing lists. So I think it's interesting. And Ana Lucia says, so it would be fine if you had 100 possible interviewees that fit all of your criteria, and you select, for example, 30 people, 50% men, 50% women, to have a representative sample. I think you, just an example, I think you probably have to have more variation than just genders. Sometimes, depending upon the target audience, I'm varying age. Sometimes you're varying savviness about something. Sometimes you're varying, experience. Sometimes you're varying behaviors. So yeah, I think that you you do, at least at my company, we get a whole bunch of responses to the screener survey, and then we start hand picking people based on trying to get a good mix.
For me, usually experience is a big deal. Like the newbie veteran scale, from somebody who has just on board, or suspect, prospect, customer, or new customer, veteran customer. Those sorts of levels are really important in many of the work that I do, because you want to know how fresh was the onboarding experience in your mind? Like, how recently did you experience this thing for the first time, and how did it go? Or people have been using it since forever, and you want to know, what are the workarounds, all the stuff Debbie was talking about earlier with the Larry stuff. Where's the homebrew solutions? Where's the pain? Show me. These guys are veterans. And it's really good to get that wide range of newbie and veteran in and amongst you. Quick word of warning. For my PhD, I, long story short, made a web radio to be able to to be able to relate personality trait to things like color and shape and meaning in an interface. The long story short was, in order to recruit people before the social networks, I went on a gaming radio station and became a DJ. What happened was I recruited loads and loads of people. It was amazing. I got like 300 people, which at the time was really great. Only problem with this is what?
Gaming radio station, they were savvy.
They were all geeks. They were all males who played a male-orientated online space trading game. So effectively, my entire PhD, the insight that I've worked so hard for 5 years, only applies to men because I sampled badly. See? These are the things that you learn, and that's in my PhD. So the point being is you have to learn things in the context of... Yeah, exactly. Well, just about. So be careful. Your insight is a function of the sample that you took it from.
Yeah, good point and good reminder. So thanks to Dr. Nick, as always, for doing the monthly long version of Office Hours with us. I know we'll be seeing you again next month. Just a reminder to everybody, you can find Dr. Nick on LinkedIn as Dr. Nick Fine, Fine. Also, if he's got courses and stuff he's doing right now, please sign up for them, because over in our Slack community, we're hearing really good things about cohort number 2. And so we hope that cohort 3 will be even better. And don't forget to sign up for my strategizing products and customer experiences space workshop. I'm holding 2 in July in 2 different time zones, so to accommodate everybody. Check it out at cxcc.to/space. And I just want to remind people that the next show on this channel, because of my upcoming travels, will be Tuesday. I'll be doing Office Hours alone. Regular time, and Wednesday will be our community hangout, aka group therapy, which we're currently holding in Remo, where we just chat and hang out, talk UX, don't talk UX. Some of you said you want to practice speaking English. Great opportunity there, no charge. You can certainly join us there. Hi, Karen. And What else can I tell you? We are going on a camper trip. So some of the upcoming shows will be from camper, which we did last year. Some of you thought I brought the green screen with me and I put fake backgrounds on. Those were real mountains. So we are going to have some, hopefully some interesting backgrounds for you as we do a work from camper trip. So thanks again to everybody who joined. Great questions. Nick, great answers. And I guess we'll see everybody soon. Thanks. Bye. Customer centricity as business intelligence. Visit deltacx.com to learn why we are